Today we're looking at a video from John Sandvan's channel, Theta Profits, where he interviewed Christian Zernich about what they're calling the lawyer's option strategy that guarantees no losses. Now that's a pretty bold claim, a no-loss trade guaranteed. And anytime I see something like that, it makes me curious. And I want to be clear, I respect when traders share their strategies publicly. It takes courage to put your ideas out there for others to examine. And it helps start important conversations, because when you hear the words no loss guaranteed, you should immediately start asking questions. So what I'm going to do here is walk through Christian's strategy step by step, break down the numbers, and highlight both the strengths and trade-offs that might not be obvious right away. And my goal isn't to dismiss the strategy outright, but to give you the context you need to decide whether it's realistic and how it stacks up, and provide angles you may not have thought of before. I'll also share how, with over 30 years of option trading experience, I approach this no-loss concept in a way that makes practical sense, so you can see how a seasoned trader would actually put it to work. Hey, just a second here. I want to give you a gift today. It's free access to my Safe Wheel Masterclass course. Normally, it's $495, but today it's free. Just click the link in the description before it's gone. Now, here's something interesting. My calculations showed the actual maximum potential for returns were different than what was talked about in the video, and I'll show you what I came up with. Now, if you want to see the full original interview, I'll leave a link in the description so you can check it out for yourself. Okay, so first thing I'm going to say is we're just going to look at the butterfly portion of this. I know he does an iron condor with it, and that gives you a little different results. So that's probably could be a whole different video, but kind of the points I want to make, you're going to get similar results probably with the butterfly and you are with the condor trade. But let's move forward just looking at the butterfly portion. Okay, let's take a look at this trade. First thing I'm going to do is rebuild it so you can see here. I'm using SPY, and I believe the day that they talked about trading was April 8th of 2025, and you build it to 480, the 500, and the 520. So I'm going to rebuild that here. So let me put this in SPY and make sure I have the right date, which is the same date that they were talking, April 8th of 2025. And he talked about going about 75 days out. Let's see. So you can see the days here as I move forward. I'm going to get around that 75 or as close as I can, 73. And what do you say? 480, 1, and then the 500 minus 2, and the 520 plus 1. Okay, so we have our butterfly here that he built, or as close as I can get to building the same one that he built. And here you can see that it costs about $200, $180, $192 with commission. So, and you can see that debit there. So around $190 here is what's going to cost you. Not much buying power, not much capital being used. Now let's do the replacement. Remember, he took the lower long, right? Which one's lower long, and he replaced it with a put and 100 shares in order to make this a credit and basically spend some money on it. Let's go with 480. Let's go plus 1, and then take out the lower long and add 100 shares. 100 and enter. Okay, now we have the same position, but look at that. We're on for a credit of around $200. So it's kind of like that no loss trade that he talks about. Here's the major change is here. It's approximately $48,000 worth of cost. So before it was only like what, $200? Now it's like $48,000. Okay, so there's a big difference, and that's why you can get this credit here. But let's take a look at what does this thing do over time. You can see in 15 days it moves up here, 30 days it's this line, 45 days it'll be up here, and then 60 days it'll be here. So about 2 weeks left until expiration, it'll be where this line is right here. And I think he talked about taking it off early, but let's talk about this in terms of returns, percent returns. I mean, let's just call this $200 right here. So I'm going to run that number. So if you make $200, but you invested around, let's call it 48,000, you're making about 0.5% every approximate 75 days, let's say. So let's say 365 divided by 75. So around 5 times. So you make 0.5% like 5 times over throughout the year. So about 2.5%. So if you never landed inside the tent, you're going to make about 2.5%, which is lower than the 4% that you'd probably be getting for bonds right now. So you're not quite doing quite as well, but what you get in exchange for that is the possibility of making more with this tent, right? But let's just be realistic here and say, well, let's not be realistic. Let's say that you pin this thing, which is not really ever going to happen, and you make about $2,200. Let's say it was priced to perfection, and you pinned it. You pinned the strike. You made about $2,200. So the maximum you can make, divided by around 48,000. So about 4.5% times 5. You're looking at about 22%, somewhere in there. Let's call it 22%, just ballparking it. You're gonna, just to make 22%, you're gonna have to pin that strike every time you do this. That's not gonna happen. So I don't see any way you're gonna make 20% with this system here. I just don't see how you can do it. Now, if you were to get out early, you could take advantage of this, which is 60 days out, which leaves 2 weeks into the trade. And you come in, let's just say best case scenario, you make $600 every time you put on the trade, which is, again, not a high probability, but let's just see what the numbers are. 600 divided by, call it 48,000, which is about 1.2%. So you multiply, that's about 5% approximately per year. If you can stay close to this profit hump here at the end, I don't see that happening. That's probably a very low probability that you're going to be making $600 every time you put on this trade. But that would be totally best case scenario, and that's like 5%. So you're not really making more than just holding the bonds. To be honest with you, just hold the bonds. And maybe every once in a while you get a nice little win, but overall, just statistically thinking, I don't see you outperforming the bonds trying to do this. That's my takeaway. Maybe you have another takeaway or another thought about that. But let me get into some other things that are interesting that I saw that I could do with this thought process. Now, here's some other alternatives to this, because this is, the butterfly here. And, what if you wanted to use this as a hedge to the upside or a hedge to the downside? Let me take a look at a couple things here. Yeah, so if you move this out, one of the things you can do is kind of break that wing a little bit, and you can get some better upside. And then just basically, you don't make money on the downside if you wanted to do that. Now we can move the whole thing. Let's say we move it a little bit out of the money. So let's take this one to the 520. And then 20 down. 540. And then we just kind of move this one up to the 500. So we're kind of moving the whole structure here. And then once we do that, we can play around a little bit. All right, let's try this. Let's move this guy closer, the upper long. Let's put it really close. And then see how that, so you can play with it a little bit. And now the problem, of course, is move this up. Okay, now that's not so bad. You've got this nice upside potential. You almost can if you get above this level here, 520, which could happen in 75 days, you're going to get automated, you're going to let it expire and make your $600. So you can make, the 5% that you're trying to make there automatically. You can also do this on the downside. So let me put this back. So we'll do it instead of the 500. We'll make the center strike 480 minus 2. And then the upper long will be 500. We'll just start there. And then the lower long will be 460. Okay, so we're kind of back to that. Now, let's see if we move this one closer, how that affects it. Yeah, see, it's kind of similar. So we're going to move this closer. Let's see how that affects it. What we have to pay for here. So now we have some downsides. We can use the same kind of structure here to give us a little bit of downside here. This is good. This is like $1,200. So let's see. So we're using that same $46,000, $47,000. And now we have, once we get past 478, we're going to let this thing expire and make about $1,200. And that's a pretty good return, but it's a little bit of a hedge. It's not a great hedge, but it's better than nothing. So what, $1,200 divided by, what was it, 48? Let's call it 47,000. 2.5%, and it happens 5 times a year because you're only 70 days. So if that were the case, you could use it like that to give yourself a little downside hedge, give you a little 2.5% downside hedge in case something goes wrong with some other structure. You can use it for that. I like that. That's pretty cool. Let's see what this thing does with some shorter DTE. So I'm going to rebuild it back the way it was. So let's do it the way he originally built it. The 500 and 20 and the 80. Okay, it's already there. All right, so here's what it looks like here. Now, what if we did this? This is 83 days. Let's say we built the same thing, but we did it. We're going to compare it. Let's just commit this. Let's call it 83 because it's an 83-day on. And then we'll look at one that's like, let's go back. Say 30 days, so we can kind of compare what it would look like. So we know our short strike is here, so minus 2, and then 20 up, so 520. And we have the 480 here, and we have the 100 shares. Okay. So let's make this its own guy. All right, so you can see when you come in closer to 31 days, it's costing you more. You're going to have to probably bring those in, or out, I should say. Let's move those out 5, and this one out 5. So they're cheaper. No. Let's move them up this way. This one this way. And let's move this one 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And there you go. So you've got to bring it in a little bit so it's a little skinnier, so your tent's not as wide when you bring it in closer in time. Your tent's not as wide, so there's less of a potential for profit in the tent, but you can also do that where it's a risk-free trade. So that's what happens when you come in time. So if you went further out in time, obviously you could widen out this tent. But obviously, you only have 31 days, so you have less time for this tent to do its job. So it's kind of like a give and take, right? Now, one of the things I want to talk about is really what I've kind of figured out. It's kind of like, well, why don't I just buy bonds? Let's say I have $48,000 worth of bonds, $48,000, and I make 4%. That gives me, let's just call it $2,000 that I can use to buy options. So it's the same concept, except for now I'm buying bonds with my money, and I'm just going to take that money that I'm going to make from the bonds and straight up just buy options with it. So if I spent $2,000. So let's take a look at a comparison. If I were to spend $2,000 on a put, now this one would be 31 days. So I would technically have to go out 365 days, right? Otherwise, I'd have to divide up my $2,000 by how much time that I put in. So let's just go to 365. $357. So let's say I'm going to spend $2,000. That's not quite 2,000. There it is. I'd spend about $1,930 right here. Just buy this put right here, and I can have some nice protection, very nice protection on a portfolio. Just straight up taking the money that I otherwise would have used, because I'm using up all that capital, I might as well just buy bonds with that money and then buy a put. Why? Because this put, watch what happens if the volatility increases. This thing's going to go up significantly. I mean, obviously you're going to have a limit here at some point, but I would rather be long a put than long that other structure that I was showing you earlier. Well, let's see what we can do with it. See what we can do if we come all the way out here. We might be able to get pretty good look. So he was doing the 500 at the short, minus 2, and then about 20 up long, and then minus on the 580 or 480, plus 1 there, and 100. All right, so here you're going to make your, your $1,200 doing that same thing, or you can kind of move this over here. Let's see if we can play with it a little bit. So let's see if I move this up. Just a little bit, a little closer. Yeah, you might be able to get away with a little more. Let's see. Yeah, you're kind of getting close. So there you go. That's not bad. So you got a downside hedge here, which if the market goes down, but you got 357 days until you can capitalize on that. But you can make about $3,000. So you can make a little bit more because you're not getting anything on the upside. So you're taking away your upside potential, and you are going to spend it all on the downside and have a $3,000 hedge that'll pay off in 1 year. Or of course you can do that in the opposite direction. Because maybe you think, oh, the market's going to go up, so I might as well take the extra money. So you break that wing. Oops. That's about as close as I'm going to get. So you don't get quite as much on the upside here. As you can see, it's only $1,800, but you can kind of collect an extra $1,800, or if you just sell the bonds. But you might be thinking, how am I going to trade options if I don't have any buying power, because I'm using it all up right here? this $47,000 is being used up, so I can't buy options with it, right? So it's like, why are you telling me this? Well, I'm going to show you how you can do that. So the way I can do that is, that's the reason why I use span and or portfolio margin. It's called profit stacking. And here's what you can do. So what is profit stacking? So if you have span or portfolio margin, you can effectively use your buying power to double dip. So you can trade an efficient option structure on top of, or any option structure, on top of number two, going long other assets, such as bonds or stocks. So for example, if I have $100,000 in startup capital, I could buy $100,000 worth of bonds yielding about 4% and still have around $99,000 to trade options. That's like having $100,000 in the account and trading with $200,000. And the term I use to describe this double dipping is called profit stacking. Now, so what you can do is you can trade options and own bonds. So let's say you have $100,000 of starting capital. Hypothetical account here, number one, you have $100,000 in bonds. And then hypothetical account two, you have $99,000 to trade options. You can also trade options with stocks. You have $100,000 in starting capital. Hypothetical account number one is $100,000 to trade stocks, and then $50,000 left to trade options with it. So you have like a $150,000 account, for example. So if you want to trade stocks, you can do the same thing. But if you trade bonds, because they're much more, they're almost zero risk, they give you like $99,000 to trade options with it. So that's profit stacking. So what that means is I could do something I would prefer and just straight out buy a put. Okay, let me clear this out here. I'd rather just take the extra money and buy a put with it, because look at all the protection I have. I mean, I've got way more than $1,200. I mean, if the market goes down significantly, obviously, it'd have to go down significantly. But if it did, I got, $15,000, $20,000 worth of protection. I've got huge amount of protection just buying straight up, spending the money. Basically what happens is I buy bonds in my portfolio. Then I have the same amount of money that I bought the bonds with to buy options or sell options or trade, whatever I want to trade. And I take a portion of that, the amount of money that I'm going to profit from those bonds, and I just straight up buy puts or buy calls, and I'll get much, much more leverage for my money. So instead of putting on a technically free trade, this is technically a free trade, but it's got a lot more leverage and can give you a lot more protection if you want to use it as a hedge instead of a risk-free trade where you're not making as much money with it. So there's just some of my ideas. Now, if you want to watch the full video on profit stacking, I'll link that video coming up next. And also I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the trade ideas and some of the trade structures that I like and the way that I like to trade, because I'm always hedged. And so how do I hedge? Let me get into that next. If you've ever made a few good trades only to give it all back a week later, then this right here is the moment to break that cycle. Free for a limited time, I'd like to personally invite you to the All Market Profits Safe Wheel Masterclass. This is my 5-day program where I help you install a real rules-based trading strategy, one that's already outperforming the S&P by over 10% in the first quarter of 2025, and it only takes 15 minutes a week to implement. Click the link in the description to get the course, the exact rules, and the trading flow chart, all 100% free. You'll get everything you need to trade this strategy with confidence, even if you're brand new to trading, even if you've tried other systems that didn't work, even if you think trading success is out of reach. Here's what you get: the full 5-day masterclass. I walk you step by step through the exact safe wheel structure I trade myself, designed for clarity, confidence, and consistency in any market. Click the link in the description for instant access. Every week, I go live with our community for coaching, trade reviews, and Q&A. And these sessions happen every Monday. And yes, I even share my screen and show my real trades. And this is the next best thing to having me sit right next to you while you trade. Click the link in the description to download the full set of rules and get started. If you're ready to stop guessing, if you want a trade plan that works in bull markets, bear markets, and even crashes, click the link in the description and you'll get instant access to your private quick start area where I'll walk you through each part of the strategy in short, clear lessons. Each video is under 20 minutes. You don't need to overthink this. If you can follow Google Maps, you can follow this strategy, and it's 100% free for a limited time. Click the link in the description, and I'll send you everything you need to get started. So let's build your edge together.